Welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is typically my guest episode, but I'm in the process of getting a lot of new guests on. I have a few super exciting guests coming on here in the next couple months, so looking forward to that. But what I'm going to do today is, and I'll do this from time to time, is share where I was a guest. And so in this episode, I was a guest on Kathy group coaching call there. And so inside, we talked about when to transition out of fat loss, some questions you can ask yourself to make sure that you don't end up in that fat loss no man's land there. We also talk about certain things to look for within the fat loss phase, different contexts within it, contexts within the fat loss phase, transitioning out of fat loss, how to do that as well too there. So a lot of practical things here from a fat loss perspective that I think will be super beneficial for you. So you may hear Kathy ask me a few questions. I think some of her clients chime in just a little bit as well too. A little bit of a different episode today, but I think it will be super valuable and beneficial for you guys. As always, enjoy. If you want to learn more about a body recomp, what it is and how to do it, I have my free body recomp checklist that I use inside the performance recomp method, my one-on-one coaching program. So make sure you go and grab that for free. If you found this podcast to be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and review, that will help more people find it. And make sure you give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff, HOEHN_. Enjoy the episode.
Thank you. Yeah, I let you note taker in so that you can have a copy. Sweet. And that, yeah, because I know it was hard to edit, right? That first one.
Once you gave me I think I can't remember what we did, but yeah, you ended up like, I was able to grab it. I think I just needed to be like the owner or something. I don't know how it worked out for sure on that. But yeah, no, if you don't mind, I love taking like a copy of this and putting it on my podcast.
Excellent. Yeah, so it's been quiet with the clients this summer. So yeah, we'll see if anybody comes in. But I loved that post. How are you doing? How's the baby?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah, no, it's been slow for me too. So I feel you there. I don't know if it's who knows what it is, but
into summer vibes.
Yeah, 2025's kind of been pretty shitty for me in general. Definitely less than 2024, but I guess you're just gonna have that sometimes. Yeah. But you and I talked about it. Like in the middle, I feel like my avatar's a little bit different now, so just trying to iron that out a little bit. I don't know if that's part of it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, baby's good though. He's growing fast. Like it goes super quick. He's amazing though. I love him.
Yeah, my babies are 27 and 25, Jeff.
So does it go fast?
Yes. Yeah, it's crazy, especially when they're little. Hi, Steph.
Hey, Kathy.
Yeah, because there's so many milestones. They go so fast. Oh my God, now they're walking and now they're like doing, it's crazy. How fast.
No, he's going to be a year in less than a month already.
Has it been a year to see?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
Fast.
It's freaking flown by.
Yeah. And it's funny because like your kids will get older, but like how we don't get older.
We get younger. Once you get a certain age, you just get younger.
And then you look all of a sudden, you're like, my God, my daughter's 25. What, 30 anymore?
Please, my kids are in their 30s now.
Yeah.
I love it.
Deb's
where are you at right now, Kathy? Are you in Utah right now or? Oh,
Yep.
Okay. I didn't know. I guess it just background looks different.
St. George. Yeah, I don't know. My kitchen has now become my new office. My husband's, oh, is this what we're doing now? I'm like, what? My office is super hot. So it's 106 here.
Oh,
and
wow.
The sun is like beating in there. And so you can only make the whole house so cold for that room. And then I come out here and I freeze my ass off. So I'm like, I might as well be here. Hey, Debbie.
Hey, Kath, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Hey, Karen. Guys, this is Jeff. Jeff is a return.
I'm a vet now.
A return, yeah. So yeah, he's on staff unofficially. But so I'm gonna type his name is there. So you can follow Jeff on Instagram or Facebook. You just put out so much content and he really dives into the science of things and he's just really, hey Kathleen, super, super smart. We started coaching around the same time-ish, I want to say. And we started with, my first coach was Jeremiah Bear. And so that's how we know each other. And then Jeff, you worked with Jeremiah. And then we've just come into the coaching space together. But Jeff's, what would you say your specialty is?
Yeah, I love body composition, performance, I really love the physiology of things and so I would say body composition is probably the biggest thing. But then also I like the nerdy stuff, but I like to try and break it down for everyday people. I think that's the thing that I try to do and I try to put in my content there. So I would say that's probably my biggest specialties there. I like building muscle, fat loss, body composition type stuff like that. I would say probably is the specialty.
And how many podcasts are you putting out a week? I feel like you're always posting something on your podcast.
So I do 2 solo episodes a week, and I kind of base those off of what I post on Instagram. So it's not like I'm like making new stuff every single time for that. but then I'll do a guest episode. And with the guest episodes, I'll usually do those like in advance. So I try to do a guest once a week on Wednesday. Again, different types of things. I've been trying to venture out a little bit from just body comp and maybe a little bit more health focused, things like that. Like, for example, I had a guy on that was like a former Navy SEAL recently. We talked about cognition type stuff. He talked about ketones for, again, cognition. So stuff like that. I had somebody on, her name was Dr. Arian Missimer. We really talked about nervous system regulation. So I'm really enjoying that side of things on a lot and kind of diving a little bit deeper into that. I'm trying to get a little bit more guests on around that. And then I do have a guest coming on this upcoming next week where we talked about resistance training and female physiology a little bit. So I think that'll be interesting for some of your clients as well too, to check out there. She's doing a lot of research in that area.
Awesome. So Jeff's podcast is Mind Over Muscle Connection.
Mind Muscle Connection. Also, real quick, I had to correct you on one more thing. We actually you and I met back in, I think it was like 2016 or 2017 at the Mind Pump Train the Trainer in San Jose.
Do I keep forgetting that?
Yeah, you do. And our story goes way before.
I guess I don't remember. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. You were there though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think we talked though then.
We may not have, but I just remember seeing you there.
Oh, I did. Yeah. Wait, have you told me this before and I just keep forgetting it?
I think so, but it's okay.
Jeremiah was supposed to go to that and he chickened out.
Man, come on, Jeremiah.
Anyways, all right. Jeff, you put out these posts and I'm like, oh my God, now I got to get you back on the podcast. If you go into the membership site, you'll see we had a fairly recent conversation on body recomp and you talked about creatine as well. So that is in the notes of the transcripts and you have access to that call. I believe that was towards the beginning of the year, but I love your post. I'm like, we got to talk about this.
Yeah.
So this would be a great topic. I shared Jeff's post in the Facebook group. I gave you guys a little bit of a little teaser in that email or text. But how do you know when it's time to transition out of a fat loss phase? Right? It may not be so clear as to when to do that. Jeff, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Yeah, it is. That's to me, that's always the tough part of a fat loss phase. It's, okay, you're seeing progress, maybe you see a little bit, maybe you didn't see as much as you wanted, but you just keep pushing. And then things they're not happening like they were initially, right? And I think the big issue at play is we're not necessarily worried about like metabolic adaptation. Like, I don't know how familiar everyone is with that, but essentially metabolic adaptation is just where when we're in an energy deficit, a calorie deficit that we need to lose weight, we're taking in less energy than we're expending. Our body does have these regulation mechanisms to conserve energy. And this is like an evolutionary thing that helped us survive hundreds, thousands of years ago where we didn't have this abundance of food around, right? So it is a survival mechanism and it was useful back then, but today's modern environment, not so useful, right? You can get thousands of calories, super easy. You don't even have to move and you can get 3,000 calories in a blink of an eye with some of this food, right? So not very useful today. Now we have the opposite issue where we bring in a lot of energy, right? And so we're trying to find ways to consume less. And so we go on a fat loss diet. We try to lose weight. Again, our body is very good at will adapt to that over time. This isn't going to just happen right away, but over time it will adapt to that. And I like to think of metabolic adaptation as essentially it's not going to be a thing that's going to cause you to not lose weight. It's just going to add a little bit more friction to the process, right? This could be something where, when you first started fat loss dieting, you had a certain calorie amount and you lost weight. And then as you lost more weight, things downregulate, like you lost more weight, your body stopped expending as much energy. We're probably looking at anywhere from a couple hundred calories. It's going to really depend on the person. That's going to be genetics on the person, the methods that you go about it in terms of how much it can impact things. The biggest things that are going to be impacted are probably your NEAT, so like your subconscious activities, so things that you just do that you're not even really going to notice it, right? So anytime you've been in a fat loss phase for a while, you've probably noticed that maybe you just have a little bit less energy. You have to drag yourself a little bit more to do certain things. And again, that's just your body downregulating energy to conserve energy, right? And so that subconscious movement is usually the one that people will see decrease the most. But again, it's very variable between people there. Again, you may blink less. You may find that when you're in a deficit, it's harder to like remember things. You're just not as clear there. And then again, we have other things that downregulate, like thyroid will go down a little bit, right? Like you just won't, like you'll see thyroid decrease a bit. So that's another thing that will get impacted a bit when we're in an energy deficit. Now, again, how bad it is really just depends on how big that energy deficit is and how quickly you are losing weight there. So that's why we can't fat loss diet forever, right? But while those things do happen, that is not the main reason why people get stuck in fat loss. It's usually more of a skill thing and more of a mental thing, right? That's the issue with like when you keep trying to lose body fat and like it's not happening, it's more of a mental thing that is the issue, right? Like it can be draining. You're trying to track everything, you're trying to exercise, you're moving a lot, and things aren't trending down. I feel like mentally that can be more of an issue here with this than the actual physiological things that happen. So that's a little bit of a primer as to what may happen. I don't know if you have any follow-ups to that, and then I can go into some questions to ask and like things like that.
I don't have any questions. No. I mean, if you have any questions.
Cool. So when we get to this point of, okay, how do you know if you should keep losing weight? Again, some of it's, or if you should continue to be in a fat loss phase or if you should transition out. So again, with kind of that primer there, again, it could be a physiological thing or it could be more of a mental/skill thing there. So I think the first thing we need to ask ourselves is, are you still willing to make the sacrifices it's going to take to get leaner? As you get leaner, as the more body fat you lose, the trade-offs are probably going to increase. If you go from say 40% body fat to 30% body fat, it's still hard. It's not an easy process because at each stage there's different problems. But generally speaking, your body is going to start to push back a little bit more the leaner you get, right? And again, this comes back to the metabolic adaptation and conserving energy, right? When your body senses it has less body fat, stored energy on its body, it's going to start to be like, whoa, what's going on here? So the leaner you get, the trade-offs are going to be a bit higher with this, right? So again, if you go from 40 to 30%, you still have to make changes from what you were doing at 40% to 30%, but from going to say 30 to 20%, you might have to be on top of things a bit more, right? There's going to be certain things that you're just going to have to pay attention to. And then when we get down to say, for women, when we're under say 20%, that's where you're really going to start to see things. You're going to have to really be on top of things and you're really going to have to go out of your way to want to continue to get leaner. Now, there's things that we can do to improve this process, which we can maybe sum up here at the end and maybe what it would look like to continue to get down. But just understand that, are you wanting to make the sacrifices that you need to continue to get leaner? So again, if you're not all in, you may be wasting your time in limbo when you could be eating more calories and fueling your training and adding lean body mass. When we talk about women over 40, bone health, right? These are things that we need to consider as we age versus just continuing to try and push, right? Because again, it could be just a thing where you just don't want to make the necessary sacrifices to continue to get leaner. But again,
That's
also
that's diminishing returns. You're putting in the effort, but not the enough of the effort to get the result that you want, but it still feels like you're making the effort, but we're not. That's time when it's, you know what, let's take a break.
Yeah. If you've been trying to push for, say, we can maybe go over specific time frames and like how long you want to be doing this. But let's say if it's been 2 weeks and you haven't seen things trend down, I don't think you necessarily need to make a change. Like it could be hey, you need an adherence thing, or it's an adherence thing. You need to look into what you're doing. Is that the issue? Do you need to take a couple days where you eat closer to your maintenance? Do you need to take a couple weeks where you take closer to maintenance? Those are some things that we could do here with that. But again, if we're talking, you've been pushing for say 4 to 6 weeks or longer and things are not trending down, we have to have that honest conversation of, hey, you want to get leaner, but you also, when we look at what you're doing, your choices that you're making are not lining up with that. And sometimes that's okay too, right? I don't think it's necessarily always a bad thing. It's just right now with where you're at, you're not willing to make those sacrifices to continue to get leaner. And I think you'd be better off, instead of keep trying to push, you'd be better off from a physiological standpoint and a mental standpoint to get back to maintenance and work on adding, again, fueling your body, making sure you're getting in enough micronutrients. You'll have more food flexibility. You can add a little bit of muscle in that process, which is going to help future fat loss phases. And you can build more habits along the ways as well too, which again, when we come back to part of this is a skill thing, you can also build skills that will help you continue to push further down. And you'll get that break from a physiological standpoint where you're telling your body, okay, we're fueling our body enough. Your body's not going to be like, oh crap, I need to conserve energy, whatever it may be, and sort of feels better there and it's refreshed. And then maybe you can now push through later on after you do this. So again, I don't think it's about like always pushing harder. Sometimes it's about knowing like what you're willing to give up right now. And I don't think you wanting more flexibility right now or not wanting to make those sacrifices is that it doesn't make you like lazy. You're strategic, and we just need to make sure it's aligned with what you want. And we just have to understand that, again, that like where we want to go, we might have to increase those sacrifices. But I think, again, as you get leaner, you kind of have to be all in, right? You can't be, oh, hey, during the week I'm on it, and then an event comes up and it's okay, I'm going to do what I want here on this, and then I'll get back to it on Monday. I think we need to be careful with that. Again, I'm sure Kathy set you guys up with strategies around, hey, if an event comes up, how do we manage this and how do we fit this into the fat loss phase and how does that work there? So that's kind of the first question that I'm asking is, do we want to make the sacrifices that we need to continue to get leaner? And as I said, if not, then maybe we go and take a break for a little bit and then we come back and again, do all those things and we push through, and then maybe you're in a better spot. And now you're like, okay, it's a little bit easier now to lose more body fat because from a physiological standpoint, I'm in a better spot. I'm in a better spot from a skill standpoint. And what I'm about to go over here, motivation standpoint, you're in a better spot. That's another question I'm going to ask if we should continue the fat loss phase is, has your motivation dropped off? Again, if you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like fat loss is going to be tough. As I was saying in that kind of last point, like your fat loss phases, they need to be intentional, and especially in today's modern environment, right? Like it's just too easy to overconsume calories and to eat more calories than we think with the modern environment, right? So again, we have to make sure we're motivated, and we have to make sure that we want to continue to do this, because if we don't, you're going to run into that issue where you're just going to keep bumping your head against the wall, right? Or hitting your head against the wall, and you're just going to feel like you're going in circles here, you're under fueling, you're not, and you're just going to get frustrated with this whole process there. So to me, if you're not motivated to continue, like to me, it's a sign that we need to switch gears. So I like to constantly check in with clients of, okay, where are you at from a motivation standpoint? Do you still want to continue to do this there? And I think that's super important. And again, if that's not the case, then this is where we have to reevaluate. And again, maybe it's now we take a break and we focus more on the performance side of things. We focus more on fueling your body and continuing to build habits versus just trying to lose scale weight there. So next thing that I'm going to ask too on this is if we need to push or pivot is, are lifestyle and social factors clashing with your goals? If you keep saying once things slow down or your weekends keep derailing your progress, to me, it's time to reevaluate the fat loss process. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the first couple ones. Again, if your lifestyle, like if you have a lifestyle that you want to live, and you're not willing to make those, to do something within those like lifestyle factors or the social events that you have, that's a sign that we need to switch gears and switch out of fat loss. So again, we want to look at these lifestyle and social factors. Are they continuing to clash with your goals? Again, it's just, hey, when I check in with clients and they haven't lost, oh, this weekend was super tough, we had a lot going on. And then the next weekend is the same thing. It's okay. Again, that's fine. Like we just have to work with this. But again, maybe right now, like fat loss is not what we need to focus on at this moment. We need to pivot to something else during this time. Are you still seeing changes on the scale, in the mirror, or in performance, right? So fat loss isn't always linear, and sometimes scale weight can be like, it can lag and it can be misleading. But again, at some point, no change is data, right? So it's okay. Maybe you're not necessarily seeing as much weight loss as you want to see. We look and it's, hey, you're feeling like you're losing weight, your clothes are fitting better, you're seeing changes in the mirror, you're feeling good from a training standpoint. To me, it's like you're still headed in the right direction here. So to me, right, like you're still losing body fat. Again, if now we go 3 to 4 weeks, we haven't seen things trend down and you're not seeing that change, again, that's a sign that we either need to push harder and make a change, look at adherence, whatever it may be, or we need to, again, transition out of fat loss for a period of time. So I'll stop there I got a few more, but I didn't know if anybody has any questions or anything on this.
Just for context, so Stephanie and they just started, and Kathleen, yeah, so they're not quite at that point yet. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. Yes, obviously.
And I will also say nobody here is trying to get to 20% body fat or under either.
Yeah, I think too, even if you're not trying to get to 20% body fat, as we talked about, I think even going from say whatever you're at, there's always, once you lose about 5 to 10% of your body fat, that's where you'll 5 to 10% of your weight, body fat, that's kind of where you'll start to see some of these things where it's like, hey, what you did initially, you might need to go a little bit of an extra step. And I think with this journey here, I think a lot of people think it's, hey, they're just going to get to their kind of goal body composition in one like fat loss phase, but it's probably going to take multiple fat loss phases. So I do think at some point, everybody's going to run into these before they get to where they ultimately want to be. And so I think this period of time, like knowing what questions to ask yourself and what to look out for, I think could be super helpful, right? To continue that process. Because again, I think that the issue becomes, if we want to take a step back here for a second, what happens if we don't ask ourselves these things is, again, you keep trying to push forward, and then what happens? You eventually get frustrated, and then you go, you know what, screw it. This sucks. I'm not seeing the change I want to make. And then now we go off the rails, and then 6 months down the line, we kind of have to start back over again. And if we can catch this ahead of time, you can be in a much better position to, maybe it's not just a linear trend down. It's, hey, you trend down, and then maybe it flatlines a little bit, and then we trend down, and it's that step fashion there. All right. So the next thing I'm going to ask.
What about hunger?
Yeah.
Addressing hunger.
Yeah, hunger is a good one. I think with hunger, so a couple things. One, I think with hunger in general, it's not necessarily always a bad thing. I think a lot of people like think hunger is this, holy crap, I got to take care of this right away. I think, okay, so it's not always a bad thing. We do need to eat and our body needs fuel. So to me, that's a sign that one, I think we need to understand that it's not a bad thing. I think when we lose body fat, it's part of the process. So we have to accept some hunger in that process. But are you ravenously hungry to where it's, holy crap, I have to eat? Are you always hungry? These are like, what is the variation of hunger there with that? And if that's the case, I'm always going to look at, okay, if you are hungry, we need to check a few things. What does your meal timing look like? What do your macros look like? Are you eating enough protein? Are you eating enough fiber? What's like the quality of your diet? Because that's going to impact it. What's your activity levels? Is sleep off? Because if sleep off, that's going to impact your hunger. If stress is high, that could impact hunger. Even a little bit of like hydration could impact it. Again, are we losing weight pretty quickly? Because that can impact it. Again, how lean are you? These are all things that are going to impact hunger. Hunger is definitely a sign that we could potentially need to switch out. But I also think there's a lot of things at play that we can do, that we can improve our hunger with the understanding that hunger is the cost of doing business in a fat loss phase. And I do think, again, and as you get leaner too, you'll find that hunger ramps up. So again, the leaner you get, the longer you've been fat loss dieting, the longer you've been like continuing to drop weight, everything's going to taste better. And so you do also have to watch out for that, right? I recently did a fat loss phase, and at the beginning of it, so you're cruising, you feel pretty good, you're a little hungry, but then towards the end, as I start to get leaner, it's man, everything just tastes so freaking good. And it's just really hard. If you're not aware of that, like it can be really hard to moderate your food intake if we're not having like a good base of food and then moderating those tasty foods, which get really tough to moderate the leaner you get, the longer you've been fat loss dieting. So it's really hard to manage there. So yeah, hunger is definitely one that I want to monitor. But the moment we have some hunger, I'm not saying we need to get out of the fat loss phase because it could be a good thing. But that was the next thing that I was going to go over is what is your biofeedback saying? So when I say biofeedback, it's just like subjective feelings, right? Now I'll go over some of these things that we'll look at. So again, do you have constant hunger? So like we talked about, that is one that I'm going to ask and look into. But to me, again, there's a lot of things that we can look into potentially. Is it poor? Do you have poor sleep? Is your, because again, if our sleep is off, that is going to impact our ability to stick to a fat loss phase because again, hunger is going to be higher. Your motivation is going to be down. You're not going to want to make good choices, but it also really can impact muscle, right? And so if we're dropping weight and we're not getting good sleep, we could be losing a little bit of muscle in that process. So we do want to make sure sleep's in a good spot, but it also impacts a lot of things. Libido is something I would look at too, right? If that's like really low, like that is something that it's lower than normal. Like these are things I want to know with my clients, because again, that's a sign that we do need to potentially take a break from fat loss dieting. Are your workouts like going in the garbage? They're just terrible. Mood swings. Are you super moody? That is something that we want to look at as well too. Menstrual cycle irregularities, which obviously menopause, transition, and things like that can obviously make that a little bit more noisy there, but like constantly moody, irritable, things like that, these are signs that your body may need to take a break from fat loss. But again, in saying that though, the leaner you get, as we lose more and more weight, the harder it's going to be to potentially interpret this biofeedback, because hunger is going to ramp up, everything's going to taste better, and moderation just becomes trickier. So these things do become a little bit tougher to pay attention to and decipher what is actually going on. But again, constantly asking yourself these things and in a check-in process or whatever can be super helpful there. Any questions on the biofeedback side of things? Cool. Next, again, would be, have you plateaued despite being adherent? So you're not like just following the plan, you're actually being consistent and nothing's moving. Again, this is a sign that our body may need a break from fat loss in a calorie deficit. So again, if you're doing everything and it's not happening, this could be more of a physiological thing in our body. We do just need to take a break and increase our calories and pivot to a different phase there. And then the last question I'm going to ask is, do you even want to get leaner or just feel like you should? I think this is super important. And do you actually need to get leaner? Do you actually want to get leaner and continue to lose weight? Because again, like,
this one was my favorite one.
yeah, well, because a lot of times people just don't even really, they just do it because they feel like they should. And I think I want to get clients to a point to where they get to a body composition, like a body fat percentage, that they feel good. And if you track blood work, you track biofeedback and those things, like that's in a good spot. You feel good from day to day. Like you feel good in your body, right? You can move well, you feel good, you feel confident. Like I think sometimes we think we need to get leaner. You don't necessarily need to, you don't have to. And so I just want to make sure clients feel like they're in a good spot. And then from there, it's okay, if we already checked all those boxes off, we're in a good spot. And then ultimately now, go ahead.
Can I just add, with social media and everything and all the pictures that we're looking at and what do we influence? Like, I want to look like her and I want abs and this. It just might be unrealistic expectations of what we think we're going to be able to achieve. So sometimes the ideal or expectation isn't matching. And I think we put that pressure on ourselves that I want to look like this, and just not understanding like what it takes to get to that, or even if you could, due to a variety of factors.
Well, and then too, I think a lot of people overlook this part of it when they see social media is they just see the outside of what's going on, right? You don't really see I'm not saying if somebody looks shredded on Instagram that they're automatically, they feel terrible. I'm not saying that, but you also don't know for sure how they feel in that process. And you don't know like where they came from. You don't know, they're probably a bachelor that doesn't have, they can work from home. Like we don't really know like the time that they have, the genetics, and you don't know what their health is like. And to me, with all my clients, I want to make sure we're in a healthy spot, because if we're not, none of this is going to last. And if anything, it's just going to make everything worse down the line. And so this is why I think it's important to ask. I like to ask clients their biofeedback. I like to look into those things and make sure they're in a good spot. Like any client I have going through fat loss, they probably get annoyed with me because I'm like, do you feel good? I want to make sure that's in a good spot, because I think that's super important. Just keep that in mind, that we don't really know what those people did to get there and what their overall health looks like when they're that lean as well too. And as you guys know, social media is the way it works is the outliers are going to be the ones that get the most reach and engagement, unfortunately, on social media as well too, right? Like the algorithm just like pushes that to where it's going to be more outliers on there. So yeah, social media is super interesting. But again, I think we just need to ask. Again, as I said, to me, it's more important to get clients to a range where they feel good. It's something that they can maintain. Like obviously to get to a new level, we have to make sacrifices, but I want it to be a range where they feel good. They can still enjoy things outside the gym. They can live the lifestyle they want, with the understanding that, hey, you can't do what you were doing at, say, 35% body fat and now be at 25% and expect it to stay there. You're going to have to make those sacrifices and whatnot, but the sacrifices are worth it to you, and it doesn't pull you too far away from the lifestyle that you want to live, with the understanding that there are going to have to be some sacrifices, obviously, there with that. So ultimately, that's where I want to get clients. And then from there, if you want to keep going, you want to get leaner, you want to test it out, and you're willing to do all the things that we were talking about here initially, then we can keep pushing it. So I think it's important to make sure that you want to get leaner there. So again, if the goal doesn't feel aligned anymore, we want to pivot. Again, make sure it's something you want to do and you have good reasons to keep getting leaner. So let's take it to the extreme. I know you said nobody here is going to push sub 20%, but let's say you decided, you know what, for whatever reason you wanted to do it and you're at 20%, but you're starting to notice that you're starting to feel terrible. Like you're super moody, hunger's through the roof, your training's terrible. You're having to make all these sacrifices that you don't want to make on the weekends. But you're like, no, I got to get leaner. We would have an honest conversation of being like, what's the reason? Like, why do you need to get any leaner than this? And if you can't come up with a good reason, then I don't think we need it. Like from a health standpoint, I don't advise that you keep going further down. So I think we need to have good reasons to continue getting leaner, whether that's really, you don't really have to continue to get leaner when you think about it, right? Yes, you could do like a photo shoot or something like that, but even that's more of a choice. It's not something that you have to do or something like that. So I think that's super important there. And then if you want, I don't know if anyone has any questions around those, but we can talk about what to do and maybe what that process looks like, pivoting and stuff like that.
Yeah, bring it on.
So I think we have two options. So we can dial things in and push with intention, right? So based on the questions I asked earlier, you realized you want to continue to push a bit more, right? Then from there, what we would need to do is we would need to make the changes you need to keep pushing in this fat loss phase. So whether it is being a little bit more dialed in on the weekends, dialing in your adherence throughout the week, being fully committed to this process for the next month or so, whatever it may be, right? So we have that option, or we pivot. Maybe you decided your body isn't in a great spot to continue to lose body fat. Maybe you asked yourself these questions and you're like, I actually don't want to get any leaner. Or the other questions made you realize you need to pivot for a period of time, right? And so from there, what I would do is we would take a diet break, right? And again, that would be, hey, we get you to your maintenance calories, and we would focus on building good habits, really improving your training performance. And yeah, just really building habits, training performance, and any other limiting factor that I feel like the client has. And we would spend really the time frame on it. It really just depends on where you're at. You could spend forever there, or maybe you spend a couple months. It just depends on where you're at. I don't think there is a right or wrong. I think you just need to make sure that, let's say you take a break, you need to make sure mentally you're ready to get back into it again. And all those things that I talked about, you still need to ask yourself those questions. But I think the big thing is we just want to stop hovering in the middle, because again, you're getting the worst of both worlds here, right? Physically, we're not doing ourselves any favor here, and mentally, we're not doing ourselves any favor there as well too. So I think the big thing is we don't want to, and we don't need to diet forever. We need the awareness to know when to shift gears, so you don't end up in that kind of fat loss no man's land where you just end up all the things that I talked about there. That's why I like to call it the fat loss no man's land. It's like you're not seeing progress, but you're doing the things that you think you need to do to lose body fat, and we're getting the worst of both worlds there.
I remember the first time that Jeremiah said that I needed a diet break. And I was like, but I'm not ready. I haven't lost the weight that I wanted. I'm like, what do you mean you're going to raise my calories? And then, never mind. I was like, so hungry. My training sucked. It was just like, I don't feel like doing this. I was like whining about my workouts. I'm like, these are hard. And he was like, I think we need to take a diet break. I'm like, no, I'm not ready. And he's like, no, you have to take a diet break. And I was like, And it was like a whole new person, like whole new motivation and read. Yeah, I needed a diet break.
It's hard to take that. It's hard to make that decision when you're actually in the process, right? Because you're like, oh, I'll just keep going. And this seems like I'm going backwards. But the banging your head against the wall and then going off plan for a while. And then you have to redo everything that you gained back and everything like that.
Yeah. Any questions? Yeah, it's a process, it really is. And it also depends on how much that you have to lose. Can you take it in a straight shot? Like sometimes you can. It really just depends on what the goal is, but typically it's not the way that we have to do it. So
that might be a good topic real quick that I can go over is like kind of rate of loss and how that's going to impact things. I think when we look at how long you can go for, I think it's going to depend on obviously your skills, like what skills do you have with the fat loss dieting, right? To go back to the hunger, if let's say we're just tracking calories and we eat one meal a day but you're super hungry the rest of the day and that one meal a day only has 20 grams of protein, it's okay from a skill standpoint, that's going to be the thing that kind of causes you to not be able to go longer. But if you get skills dialed in, you're say above 30% body fat and you're losing half a pound-ish per week, right? Like nothing, like that's good. To me, that's good. But again, for some people that might not feel like a lot, like you're losing at a slower rate, you could really go on for a long time, right? And you just need to ask yourself all these questions that I went through there. And you could do that for an extended period of time. Now, if you go super quick with it, right, you're losing, say, 1 to 2 pounds a week, that's going to shorten your time frame of how long you're going to be able to go in the fat loss phase, right? So I think your rate of loss, which equates to the energy deficit that you're in, is going to be the big thing at play. And then obviously in that process, we need to make sure that you're eating enough protein, lifting weights, getting some activity in, and obviously focusing on making sure that sleep is just not terrible and you're doing a decent job of managing like overall stress on your body. Like those would be the things that we also would want to make sure are there in that process. But generally speaking, the more body fat you have, the slower you go, the longer you can be in a fat loss phase. The quicker you go, the leaner you are, the shorter you're going to be there in the fat loss phase.
yeah, I think for like my demographic, right? We just think that we just have to stay in a diet forever. We've been brainwashed in that, hey, this is just what we're at. And we suck at it because we're like, okay, so I'm supposed to be at like 1,400 calories or 1,500 calories. That's what I need to lose weight. And then we can't stick to that because that's just not enough calories. That's not how we can work in weekends and things like that. But we just get stuck in that diet mentality. Like I always have to be in a deficit. And like you said, you're not in a deficit all this time because you have all these other things going on. And so just recognizing, like having a designated fat loss phase and then knowing when it's time to pivot out of that based on everything that you just talked about with biofeedback.
Yep. And again, I think that's why it's so important to ask how the client is feeling too, because again, I have seen, just to play devil's advocate to what I just said here, I've also had situations with clients where they've had these phases where they've lost weight and then like they go off plan for a little bit, but I shift focus to, okay, let's make sure you still get enough protein in. Let's make sure you still weight train, get your movement in, right? And then obviously we're focusing on general lifestyle habits of like sleep and stuff like that, at least the best that they can be. And it's like they have a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks where their weight stays about the same. And then they're like, okay, I'm ready. And then they get back to it and then they push, right? So I think sometimes as long as to me, the most important thing here is you have a good base of habits at all times. And again, what are those habits? It's getting enough movement in per day, doing some cardio, weight training, and then getting, let's say, enough protein in, right? Like as long as you have some basic habits to fall back on, maybe you have a couple weeks where you are a little less adherent and those are weeks at maintenance, as long as you, again, have basic habits that you're focused on. To me, like I've also seen that happen too, where sometimes that can be a thing that happens where you lose a little bit, whatever, you have events come up, you're just less motivated to do it. You have a couple, 2, 3, 4 weeks where you're closer to maintenance. And then it's like, again, it's that kind of stepward down fashion of weight loss there.
Any questions, ladies? Karen and Kathleen?
I guess I think I just explained it so
Yeah.
well. No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely.
If you want, I can go over. I know we talked about like the transition. We can talk about what transitioning actually looks like, some ways to transition a little bit better. If you want, we don't have to.
That'd be great.
Because that, to me, like that is
I think like it's more exciting and maybe you're going there with this, but instead of looking at it as like you're just giving up, like just transition to another phase. Like we're just going to go into a build phase and capitalize from you taking a break and getting more calories. And then we're just going to build. So I'm sorry if I preempted what you were saying.
No, that's good. Yeah, no. And then you're ready to go for another fat loss phase. And now it'll actually be more effective and efficient there. But this transition to me is super important because this is where this is where people kind of get to the thought of, oh, hey, diets don't work. I lost weight and then I gained it back, or I gained some of it back, or I gained it all back. So to me, this is a crucial period of time because as we talked about, when you do get leaner, you lose some weight, you have those responses of higher hunger, everything tastes better. Your body naturally wants to trend back up there. It's okay, hey, you just lost all this energy, stored energy on the body. We got to get back to where we were. So you're going to have that natural drive to go back up. And so I think this period of time when you are lower calorie to increasing a bit, it's tough because there's also some mental things. I think a lot of people screw this up because they end up getting stuck in this no man's land in this. Again, hey, I need to eat 1,400 calories, but when I increase to 1,600 calories, I gain weight. So I need to go back to 1,400 calories. And then they get stuck at, say, 1,400 calories forever. And that's where they feel like they need to be. Or people lose weight and then they stop doing what they're doing, weight comes back on and they're like, hey, diets don't work, fat loss dieting doesn't work. But to me, the real issue at play is like the strategy, execution, and mindset and education around what is going on during this period of time. So what happens when you increase calories post-diet? So you fat loss diet, you lost 10 to 20 pounds. But in that process, you're smaller, right? Your body used up stored energy on your body. And when you start to increase calories, what's going to happen? It's the best way to, you're just deflated almost in a way. And so when you increase calories, again, what's going to happen is you're going to get more, you're going to add a little bit of water weight. A lot of it's going to be in the storage form of carbohydrates, which is glycogen. So that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. So again, anytime you go like low calorie and then you eat some more carbs, I'm sure you've noticed your weight come up a little bit after doing that. You're also just going to have more food volume in your gut and more sodium and fluid retention. So the scale may slightly go up when you go from say 1,400 calories to say 1,800 calories, right? That's not you gaining body fat. That's just, again, these kind of natural body processes that happen. And again, just a little bit more food in your system there. So again, the scale might go up slightly. I've also seen it stay the same. And in some, I've actually seen it slightly go down when they increase food. And this is if somebody's been like super under recovered or they've had a lot of stress on their body, and adding in some food helps take off some of that stress there. So the scale, I've seen it all with clients, right? Like their scale weight goes up a good amount, some it stays about the same, and then some it's like that it actually goes down there. So big thing though is short-term weight gain is not fat gain, right? This is where people panic. But what you don't want to do is keep calories too low out of fear because you saw your scale weight go up. And again, that's where people get stuck spinning their wheels. So big things we want to do in this transition is we want to keep our structure tight. Just because you're increasing calories doesn't mean structure goes out the window, right? We still want to keep similar meal timing, stick with familiar food choices that we've had. And we just want to be careful with super tasty foods right away. I'm not saying not to have any, but we have to be a little bit extra careful with this. And I would slowly add these back in over time. Like I wouldn't just all of a sudden have a diet, your fat loss diet, and then now you're eating more calories and you completely change what you're eating. Again, your body's in this state where it's going to want to naturally go back. And so we want to be careful with the food choices because again, everything's going to taste way better. Again, be mindful of food reward. Everything's going to taste better post-diet, especially calorie dense type foods, right? Those super tasty foods. So it's going to be really easy to overeat and it's going to be really hard to moderate them. So don't let that catch you off guard. What we want to focus on during this transition is daily movement and doing some of your normal cardio. We want to high protein, sleep and stress management, and energy. We want to pay attention to energy, mood, digestion, not just looking at the scale. We want to also focus on these things and make sure they're in a good spot. So I come back to these habits of if you gain a pound or two and you're lifting weights and you're eating high protein and like you're doing movement, it's like that's going to look a lot different than someone who gains 5 pounds and they're just eating everything and they're not doing any of these things. But how do we want to approach that calorie increase? I don't think you necessarily need to like reverse diet for months, but I also don't think you need to go crazy either, right? I think you can add, say, 150 to 300 calories above your fat loss intake. Maybe if you add in more carbs, you do that around your training or around movements. And then again, watch your biofeedback and weekly weight averages and see where things are trending when you add those calories in there. Again, just because let's say you got down to 150 pounds and maybe you increased calories and now maybe your weight's around like 152 after the first week of doing that, I don't think that means you failed, right? That's to me is you're still in a great spot. We're building now, things are better. So you're going to have better recovery, better performance. You're going to improve your body composition and better long-term progress there. So those are the main things I would look at when like transitioning out of that fat loss phase and how to make that pivot.
And just think of it as like a health phase, build phase, whatever. Switch the goal in your mind so that it's not, I'm not losing weight. We're doing something else that's going to have a positive impact on your body composition down the road if you're still looking to get leaner eventually.
And I always try to tell clients, like, I really try to point out like how they feel in the process, right? Because I think once you go through both and you do both properly, you both phases, right? Where you're eating fat loss calories and then you're eating it maintenance, right? Like I tried most of my clients, I'm going to push towards just staying at maintenance calories, like around there, not like going onto a bulk or anything like that. But I always try to like point, and this is why I like tracking biofeedback, is I just want to point out how you feel, right? And a lot of times people are like, they're not as hungry anymore. They feel better in their training. They have more energy throughout the day. They don't feel like they're constantly hungry and they need to constantly eat. So I always try to relate it back to that during this period of time. And maybe you come up with some like performance type goals during this time to help you focus on something different versus just the scale weight there.
Absolutely. Kathleen, do you have any questions? Recovery and sleep has been tough past couple.
I had to give myself some grace for a week. I was having trouble. I wasn't sleeping. And then I just realized that I definitely had a win with weight loss going down, but my recovery and sleep were suffering. So I think it's just, I feel tired, and I'm usually a very high energy person. So I had to give myself a bit of grace of just, okay, if you don't feel like working out, you're still keeping movement going and stuff like that, get back on it. As I said, I moved room. I'm sleeping better now. So by tomorrow, I think I should be starting to feel like my old self.
You're very active. So
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I am very active, but it's just, as I said, at my age, it's like recovery is a lot different when I was a younger athlete. And I think that's where I have to give myself some grace.
I know for me, when my son was born, like that was not the time that I was going to try to like do any sort of body comp change. At that point, it was just like, okay, I knew recovery was going to be low. So it's, hey, I have to alter my intensity of training, right? Like that's probably not going to be that month, that period of time when you're not getting good sleep. That's probably not the time that I'm going to be setting PRs. So it's almost, hey, I'm just working out to maintain what I have, but also to maintain health. So sometimes you do have to take that, and that would be a perfect week to where, yeah, you're not trying to push body composition change, weight loss. It's more so, hey, I need to just focus on what are the good habits that are going to help me recover during this period of time, because it's hard to lose to fat loss diet when you're under recovered and stressed and things like that.
And I think that's the one great thing, Kathy, that you share me with the shreds, is that I actually track how I feel. Like I'm actually putting it somewhere, and then I can go and reflect on it. Yeah, I feel like garbage because I'm not sleeping, and my recovery has been really bad for about 10 days. But it's a bit better today.
What's going on with sleep? Do you know?
Yeah, my waking me up. So I've just moved to another room. So he's got a lot of pain right now, and I feel bad for him, but he's moving around with pain. I'm just a light sleeper. And then I had a competition on the weekend. I did really well. So I saved my recovery and my expenditure to compete on the past weekend. So it went well for me. So me and the horse are taking some time off, and we're back at it tomorrow. You got to beat those little kids.
Stephanie is a horse mom too.
Yeah.
I know all about that.
Any other questions for Jeff? All right. We'll share some wins after. Jeff, thank you so much. I so appreciate you coming on. I loved this topic just because I think we're focused on the fat loss phase and not recognizing like, when is it time to come out of that? That is not a bad thing to come out of that. And then goals change too. You might, as you're going through it, you're like, God, do I even want to do this anymore? What is the goal? Because I feel good, right? I look good, right? Maybe I'm not. Maybe I don't need to look like this person, or maybe this is fine. So just changing the course if needed. Or do you really want to keep pushing? And then, like you said, let's look at what we're doing and then double down or just take a break.